In this video, I'm going to go over how to work with both opacity and blend modes. And opacity is pretty straightforward. It allows you to change the overall transparency of a shape. And you can do this from a couple different places. So for example, if I have this shape here and I click on it, I have the option for opacity at the very top or on the side here. And this is showing something called the appearance window. And we're going to come back to that in a bit. But if I lower the opacity of this color, notice we can see the other colors between it. And same thing, if I do it with these couple, I lower this, right? They all are going to lower the overall transparency of the shape so that you can see behind it. And this is really helpful for creating effects like glass or just creating overall interactions between shapes. Now, right now we can only control the overall form of the shape. So for example, if I select this form here and I add on a stroke, so I'm going to add on a yellow stroke. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Notice that the stroke is also having that same opacity effect applied to it. In order to adjust the stroke of the shape different than the fill of the shape, you're going to have to go to the appearance window itself. And you can go to Window and Appearance. And this is going to show you, and let's just twirl that back in. It's going to show you all the settings of your shape. So if you apply an effect and you don't expand it, that'll be present here as well. And you can see that the overall opacity of the shape is set to 51%. Let's turn that all the way back up. And now if we if we twirl down our fill or our stroke, you see you can change the opacity independently. So if I just want to change the fill, click on opacity, and inside here, I can change the opacity and drop it down. Inside this window is where you could also apply effects. So if you go to your effects panel, you could go to warp and arc, and notice that this is just affecting the inner form here. It's not affecting the overall stroke. So there may be situations where you would like to do this. It really depends. And then you say okay, and notice you can turn it off and on based on being able to see it. So there's just one sort of added note inside here. Let's turn these all the way back up. So I'm going to switch this back up and drag this effect to the garbage. And then I can close out my appearance window for right now. And let's also get rid of our stroke. Now, the other option, in addition to using opacity, is using blend modes. And inside blend modes, you can select them by selecting a color or selecting a form. And on the opacity window, if you click it, you'll see this option where it says normal. And this allows you to change how this shape or this form or this color is blended into the layers below. And in some regards, you kind of have to play with these and see how they work. But these ones here that are the top three are going to be a subtractive form of color. And these ones are going to be an additive form of color. And so looking at these, if I select all three shapes and I change their collective opacity to multiply, you'll see that when they overlap each other, they're going to subtract each other and become black. Whereas if I select these three and I go to opacity and I select lighten, notice that when they are added together, they're going to create white. So you've got a couple different ways of creating interactions with each other. There's many in here. So for example, if I select these and I go to exclusion or difference, you can see that it's not going to change so much. If I go to hue, right, they're all going to sort of combine together. And it really takes this sort of blending and experimenting to see. Now, a couple of notes. I have this form on the side over here that is also using blend modes. So the opacity is on this outside shape. And so they're grouped together. So I went into this top one, which also has a gradient and has it on the line form. And these are created using blend modes. You'll see that it's set to exclusion. So it's going to blend into the bottom one and create this like nice sort of green that's there. Now, one fallacy that can sort of come up is, you see how I have these ones? I'm going to switch this back to lighten. Is if you have a color behind any of these shapes or any form behind these shapes, they're going to blend into whatever is below them. So for example, if I turn on this orange background, you can see how we totally lost this red form here, right? So if you want to keep the sort of interaction that you had onto the objects themselves, you're going to have to do one more thing. And to show this, I'm going to select these three shapes and I'm going to group them together. So Command G, or you can right click and go to group. Now that doesn't fix it. You've got to do one more step. And the way you're going to do that is by twirling down into your layer that it's on and selecting the group itself. And you can also do that from here. Now they're all selected as a group. I'm going to go to opacity and choose isolate blending. And when I do that, it's going to say keep the blending of that layer, or of that group unto itself and don't have it affect anything outside of it. So again, select your objects, group them together, and change that group to have isolate blending unto itself. So here, I'm going to select this shape, and you see when I drag it on, it turns green, right? It's totally lost that beautiful blending that we had going on. So select your form, go to opacity, and choose isolate blending. And that's going to preserve the blending unto the group itself. So these are some tools that you can use for moving forward to create some really nice blends of colors that you have going together.